second to go for the win. He got it. The Cougars win it. Number one remains number one. Cougars reset. Jackson again finds it. And the Houston Cougars go from the first floor out to the Sweet 16.
Stick it in your pipe and smoke it, baby. Yes!
Welcome to the Scott Holland Podcast, back here at the end of May, nearly at the end of another athletic season, the ninth such season we've talked about on the show. But, I wanted to start with something that goes outside of U of H sports here. We initially planned this episode, actually, promise I'm getting somewhere here, for last Friday. I was not going to be on it because I had a pre-existing conflict, but it was a day that worked well for my two other co-hosts, so pushed them to go Friday, and then obviously Thursday late afternoon, evening, a really serious wind and rainstorm blew through the Houston area. Tons of people lost power, including my co-host here. I know a great many of the friends and family I have that live in the Houston area were without power for the next day and the days after. So, yeah, there might be some of y'all out there that are still dealing with just getting power back or not having power. I know multiple people lost their life in this storm. So I just want to start out by saying all of us here hope everyone listening was affected as little as possible by this, that those of you who were able to get through that without it being as painless as possible for all of you out there. And because this isn't just a University of Houston podcast, but I would say that Dustin, Bobby, and I genuinely love the city of Houston, have spent all of us to varying degrees, parts of our life living and enjoying living in the Houston area. So just hate that's going through that. Hate that Houston just generally has been going through with weather stuff the last 7-8 years, especially even though it's always, having grown up in Houston, kind of a magnet for some of the more extreme weather in the area. Just hate that the city's going through it right now, and hope everyone out there is dealing with the worst of it. And those of you are get through as quickly as possible. Dustin, very glad that I'm talking to you now. Any residents with power? I know you're one of those without power for a few days, so glad that's over for you. How you holding up otherwise, bud?
Yeah, doing all right. We were without power for about 72 hours from Thursday evening, came back on Sunday evening, mercifully came back on Sunday evening. We were, my fiance and I just kind of we had gone to visit some friends who had power, and we're kind of like game planning. Okay, how are we going to keep the dog from, not getting heat stroke while we're at work tomorrow and things like that. And then came home and discovered that our house had gotten power back. And it was a little emotional. And then just when you realize how much you take the whole electricity and air conditioning thing for granted. But I mean, feeling very lucky as well. I mean, our neighborhood and all around Houston just saw an unbelievable amount of just trees knocked over, other, power infrastructure knocked over, things like that. And there were even some houses real near us that even after we got power back for multiple days after still did not get it. And then I know I saw people on Twitter today who still didn't have power in Houston. So the fact that we didn't have any house damage, car damage, got power back in 72 hours, honestly made us feel pretty lucky at the end of it all. So glad to be able to kind of bounce back from that enough to be talking some Cougar athletics here, and like you, just extending best wishes and hoping everyone held up and is continuing to hold up okay with the storm that we got.
It's perspective. I wish it didn't involve you and many other people in Houston going through something very difficult. But it reminds us, like there are things that we are very happy about sports wise. There are things we're not happy about sports wise here on the show. But if nothing else, like it reminds me, hey, the things I'm annoyed about aren't nearly as important as like someone having power, somebody just dealing with something as difficult as home damage from a windstorm. Bobby, you were having a little bit of technical issues earlier. Can you hear us now?
I got you loud and clear. Can you guys hear me?
Hey,
sure can, because that would certainly be fun to edit if you did not.
I had to get the app on my phone, and now it's like leaning up against my laptop. So like I'm at my parents' house while we record this, so it's kind of one of those things where I'm like, we're just gonna make it work, boys. So sorry, the camera's not that great. You got a weird angle of my stupid face that you're gonna have to look at if you watch this on YouTube, but I'm here and I'm ready to talk Cougar sports.
Isn't that fantastic news? How you holding up, bud, generally?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. Just I spent the last week down in Houston. Got to go to the bookstore, check out some cool U of H gear. Got a new emblem for my car, and now I'm in Waco for the night and back to work. Busy work weekend for me. So super excited though.
Yeah. Say hi to Chip and Joanna for us.
Yeah,
over
will do.
your close personal friends, the Gaineses.
I already drove past the silos. I said, you know what, Sam and Dustin would appreciate it if I told them hi. So I did for you guys. Don't worry about that.
Appreciate it. Me and Chip go way back here, and you know who else we go way back with, guys?
Ooh, nice transition.
Who do you think? I was gonna say, you guys are good guessers. At least one of you is a trivia aficionado. Who do you think I'm thinking of here?
I feel like you're gonna say Charlie Hustle is gonna be the answer to this.
Again, knew my trivia aficionado co-host there would be able to get that guess. Of course, our good friends at Charlie Hustle, available to you on the World Wide Web at charliehustle.com. Supporters of this show, like it's really cool. This does not relate directly to U of H, but does relate directly to Charlie Hustle. It just seems like every week, guys, they have like a new thing with a Kansas City pro team. Like they have something with the Royals. They were a sponsor of the Big 12 softball tournament. Just like Charlie Hustle's all over the place. But I can tell you, for a very big and growing brand, like they still value us as partners, guys. Gonna break it to y'all on the podcast that you might have something you like from Charlie Hustle coming this summer before the next athletic season starts. Crew neck shirts, hoodies, all fantastic vintage Cougar designs. It's more shirt season, but if you're someone who stocks up on your colder weather gear in the off season, Charlie Hustle's got you in all sizes, great designs that you're going to find nowhere else. Made their way all the way to the U of H bookstore, Bobby. Isn't that right?
Yes, it was pretty cool. There were a lot of vintage inspired shirts, and there was one from Charlie Hustle, but I was super excited to see it. I was like, let's go, boys. Very, very excited for them to be in the bookstore.
Got Charlie Hustle's tentacles into the U of H universe. So check our friends out.
Responsibility for it too.
Exactly. Certainly not the efforts of this growing apparel company that I just mentioned is all over the place. So please support them at charliehustle.com. Use our promo code POD15 to save 15% on your order of fantastic Cougar wearables. Charlie Hustle, charliehustle.com. We always like to prioritize Cougar sports in the NCAA postseason. So we're going to start with Cougar golf with the LSU regionals. I'm really trying to think about this. Dustin, you've been on here now with me for 9 seasons. Bobby, you've been following the Cougars generally for much, much longer, for the 16, 17-year friendship we have now all between the three of us shared. I really can't think of, either whether it's 2 seasons or like 2 different gendered sports teams that had as similar finishes to their season as Cougar men's and women's golf. It's kind of crazy, right? Like just how similarly, like obviously how you got from point A to point B, which we're going to talk about, is a little bit different for both teams, but the end result was just shockingly similar, almost like more similar than you think could have realistically like happened.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go for it, Bobby. You're the golf guy. Jump in here.
It's really odd to see, to your point, Sam, we've never had men's and women's basketball good at the same time, really. We've never had football and volleyball really good at the same time. You had a couple of seasons ago where football goes 10-2 and they go to the Sweet 16, but it was just kind of one of those things where it didn't really feel like the football team was performing up to the volleyball team. But
I've come up with it actually.
What's that?
2008 baseball and softball. Like baseball went to the College Station Regionals, softball ended up, hosting the regionals and supers. Not exactly the same, but that's the closest I could think of. And I don't know why I didn't just think of it till now. Sorry to cut it on you there.
And sandbagging us with raising that. This has never happened.
Yeah, he's like, this isn't even a thing. And then he just brings out that it's a thing. No, I think for it, it's different, but the same in the way that they finished. I think I had higher expectations for the ladies going into their regional than I did for the men going into theirs. The men surprised me. The women finished about where I thought they were going to. So I don't really. It's a little different in that sense, but overall, just what a performance by both teams in their regionals. Like I said, would have been a little bit more excited to see the ladies advance. Would have been shocked to see the men advance. But both gave it a really good run.
Yeah, it was funny. Actually, you mentioned baseball and softball. That's kind of my first initial reaction was not the exact specific end of season, but it kind of reminded me of the way that the baseball and softball have these seemingly locked fates for the last 4 or 5 years or so. But no, in terms of the result for the men, kind of like Bobby said, really, really exciting result. A team that I don't think any of us really expected to be in contention, to be moving on to NCAA championships. But at the same time, they put in a really strong effort, and Bobby being very generous by not bringing this up immediately. If I was someone, I would have brought this up immediately, but you saw this, the kind of roller coaster where after round one, they were in, pretty good position and looking good. And then just started off round two just horrendously. And all of a sudden, you go from like above the cut to make to advance the nationals to all of a sudden you look up and about halfway through round two, they were, I want to say it was like 11 or 12, I think at most, strokes up behind the cut. And you just go, oh man, they just fell off a cliff. And in the group text, I think Sam, you a little bit, and me definitely, were just like, well, that's it.
I was very much more on your side. I will mea culpa. I'm not going to try to rewrite history and say I was the right take here. Sorry.
Yeah. No, we were both just going, well, that's it. And Bobby was the lone dissenter going, no, hold on. Like, it's not over. You can get right back in this. And I was like, no, I don't think so. I think we're done. But they did. They got right back in it. I think at one point they were, tied for the last spot, and eventually ended up missing the cut by 2 strokes. I mean, I think we're kind of going to end up repeating ourselves what we talked about with the women's team and the way that they ended the season, because like we said, it's very, very similar, which is you just have to be really impressed with how they performed in NCAA, over the course of the season and in NCAA postseason as well. But it is just, it's a little bit unsatisfying to be congratulating the team on how they performed when they're that close. In the women's case, it was 1 stroke off the cut. The men's case ended up being 2 strokes behind that 5th spot. But it's just so much more fun to be, gushing about a strong performance when you get over the line and advance to nationals. And certainly for the women's team, that's, coming from a desire from wanting to see them finally get to nationals for the first time. For the men, it's wanting to see them get back there for the first time in a while, when that's, the team with the most NCAA, Division I men's golf championships of all time is the University of Houston, as we well know. So it's tough. It's tough to see them get so close, but on the other hand, they overperformed and gave a really good account of themselves. And then when things got tough, they really stuck with it and fought back and got really, really, really dang close to making it to nationals.
Yeah. And, I think how I feel about it is that we've come on this show and talked about golf postseasons where, we were happy they made it to regionals, but like realistically the last day or two of the event, it was them playing out their rounds. Like there wasn't any realistic way that they were gonna get from where they were to in contention for the top 5 spots. Yeah, with some, there were some exceptions, like Karen Fredgard, obviously, and Leonie Harm really, really competed at a high level individually. So I don't want to just write off everything the Cougar men and women have done in the postseason. So I am grateful that in both instances they were so competitive that it was like down to the last hole. That if like Santiago de la Fuente makes a birdie on that final hole because he was the last Cougar on the course, then who knows, U of H may get into a playoff there and get with one of the teams they beat the teams that they were tied with and get the last spot to the NCAA championships. And again, it bears repeating, the men had a good final round, their best round by a pretty good margin of the entire event, and it's just kind of unfortunate that every team ahead of them had an even better final round than the Cougs 3 under par. And, late birdies by De La Fuente and Austin Riley got the Cougars within 1 stroke of LSU, just unfortunately never got closer than that. And again, as painful as the final results were for both the men and women, I think if I ever had any doubt that team golf could create the kind of tension and drama, all the ingredients for compelling team sports that you have, I would say this season's 2 golf regionals have proven me wrong if I ever doubted it. Incredibly dramatic. And obviously it goes without saying that we still would have liked at least one of those dramatic finishes to end up with a Cougar team moving on to their respective championship, but I think we could be proud of the effort too. Frustrating that the margins were so close, but still happy these are 2, if you want to zoom it out to the women's program that just finished their season up previously as well, that these are 2 consistently in the postseason sports that were both extremely close to moving on to the final part of the sports championship. I mean, that is not the case for all the teams we're going to talk about. We're going to specifically talk later in this episode about teams that are not even within shouting distance of that comparable place in their respective sports. So I appreciate that, even if I share the pain with you guys. Sorry, Bobby.
And no. I'm the one interrupting you. For me, the big thing, the kind of takeaway that I want Cougar fans to appreciate with this is the fact that while it seems disappointing that you made it to the regional and you got eliminated, this is basically making the NCAA tournament. Do you want to see your team go to the Sweet 16 every year? Yeah, you want to see them go to nationals and things like that. But we don't tend to crap on our team when they're going to make a NCAA tournament, right? Would it be better to be a top 25 team? Absolutely. And the women's team bordered on that at times this year. So just a thing to kind of realize with Cougar fans is it's not easy to make an NCAA regional. And we were an at-large team that was projected on the men's side to not advance past regionals. And they put up this fight where, you were kind of going up against, you're the 11 seed going up against the 6 seed, and you had a shot at in the final minute of the game. You'd be like, I can live with that. Now, do you want to be the 11 seed every single year and just kind of going, no? Yeah, and I'd rather be the 11 seed than not in the tournament, but I would like to see us as a 7 seed one day, kind of the favorite to advance.
Yeah, and I think the thing that, as we said, I think there's a lot of reason for optimism regarding the team in the year that they had and the regional performance that they had. But, the downside to that is Houston was led once again, Santiago de la Fuente, and, just having an even round, 73, 71, 72, when the rest of the team was unfortunately you had just really two go because you have this whole thing. You have 5 golfers who take the top 4 scores. And unfortunately, Houston had 2 other golfers kind of had a semi-disastrous second round, which just kind of ended up, if one of them has a decent second round, that's a difference of probably more than 2 strokes. We're talking about this team advancing to nationals. So that has kind of been the thing of the last couple of years is you go, this team can really, if 1 or 2 golfers besides De La Fuente kind of has a really big day, a really impressive tournament, this team can do some really exciting things because they have that kind of, reliable guy that's going to be there among the top 10 or 15 leaders in even really tough events like De La Fuente was 14th in the individual leaderboard in this one, but just not enough help behind him. And that kind of looked like that was the case again. And unfortunately, you talk about trying to go be a 7 seed or something, going forward. Again, my best read, I'm not sure exactly with COVID, but my best read is that he is out of eligibility after this year. So
and he's good enough that he's probably going to go do Q school and try to join the Corn Ferry or the PGA.
Yeah, he's already has exemptions to some all the majors, Bobby, or is that
all but the PGA, which was just played? So he's still got one. And if he declares,
and the chops to probably play professionally anyway.
Yeah. If he declares that he's going to be pro, so if he goes pro, he loses those exemptions. At least that's how it used to be. I'm not 100% sure if it's still the case. So I would imagine up until August he'll be considered an amateur, so he can play in the Open and the U.S. Open. So I would imagine he is not going to be a Cougar next year.
Yeah, so I think challenge for Jonathan Dismuke to see what can you do with this team going forward without the guy who's been kind of your leader for the last 2 or 3 years.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's the question. Is Santiago de la Fuente's replacement one of the guys in the roster right now? Is Jacob Burrow, Wolfgang Glawe, or Grant Doggett improving as an incoming transfer like de la Fuente was at one time a few years ago? I mean, it's a $64,000 question.
All right, fellas. So track went to Big 12 Outdoors, and we got some early prelim results. So, guys, do we want to kind of go through those? I know Dustin has kind of been the guy I lean on for some track results. I'm still trying to learn how to read these results properly and all that kind of stuff. So, Dustin, I'm more than happy to hand it off to you, but I wanted to at least get us to the segue, and I'm not as good at those as Sam, but yeah, let's talk some track. How's that sound?
I don't know if I call myself good, but I appreciate it, bud. Let's do it, Dustin.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was a strong Big 12 outdoor performance for the Cougar program, who we kind of talked about wanting to see them, or at least I talked about when we previewed this, wanting to see them finish higher in outdoors than they had in indoors, feeling like they probably had a stronger team at the outdoor events than the indoor events. And we did. We saw the men improve from, I believe it was 6th in Big 12 indoors to 5th at outdoors, and we saw the women improve from 11th to 9th. So, really it was, in terms of highlights, you got to start with Sean Maswangani, because he was just so good as per usual. Ended up being named the Big 12 Conference Performer of the Meet for his efforts in I believe it was the title in the 100, the 200, and the 4x1. Who I think that was the real highlight for me as well. We kind of talked about how the 4x1 had, I believe it was Baylor, Tech, and UT Austin, who all three had better times on the year in that event than Houston. But nonetheless, even in my preview, I kind of was like, well, hey, I really like to see the men's team just even get onto the podium. I thought would be a really impressive performance, given how good those other Texas schools are. Not only did this team make the podium, they won the dang thing, 38.44 seconds to claim the team national, or the team championship, the team conference championship, I should say. And that's really exciting, because that's kind of been Houston's bellwether event for so long. Is the men's on the men's side is the 4x1, and it kind of dropped off the last year or two, and we had Sean, but not necessarily the sprinting depth behind him. And seeing more of that depth with not only the 4x1, but sophomore Louis Hinchcliffe turning up really well in the individual sprinting event as well was really exciting, because it's cool to see, and we want to see, obviously, you want to get selfish. I continue finding other events that you can do well in, which I think we saw some of those this year, but then also you want to turn around and continue doing well in your strong suits. And for Houston, that's always been on the men's side of the sprinting events. So seeing Sean do as well as he did, seeing Louis Hinchcliffe do as well as he did, see the 4x1 win the event, I thought really, really impressive and exciting performance by the men's team and the women as well.
My biggest picture post outdoor championship, the Big 12 outdoor championship track and field thought is how cool it is to see the number of different events and events where you have athletes capable of being on or around the podium, beyond the ones that we're used to seeing this program do well in, like the sprints, like the sprint relays, but to have a number of different difference-making performers in the jumps, the throws, just about every type of event you can think of that involves track and field. But in the same way that watching, Cougar football be really good at passing the football, or Cougar men's basketball playing lockdown defense, like, it is cool to see U of H be awesome at the sprinting event. It is cool to see U of H be awesome in the 4x1, and to see Sean and Louis Hinchcliffe go 1-2 in the 100 meters. Like, love to see it in every event, but especially cool to see this program. And we talked about it in the preview, Dustin, that this program's sprinting pedigree needs to be respected, even if U of H went into outdoor championships with times slower than a handful of the teams in front of them. That this program has a truly transcendent sprinter in Sean Maswangani. And I think over the last week, Louis Hinchcliffe, not to get ahead of ourselves with early prelim results, but the last week or so, Louis Hinchcliffe has been quite a good one. It is a week alone that has kind of written him into the track record books for his home country, which I think is super fucking cool. Honestly, that's just one of those things. Like this guy's this guy is going to be among the fastest of British sprinters ever. Like that's really awesome. Another athlete who I think, not surprisingly, was a big contributor to the men's side, Devion Wilson. An exciting but very unsurprising win in the men's 110 hurdles. Finished almost 0.3 of a second quicker than the next fastest competitor, which I would say, guys, in that event is a pretty crazy margin. Like just the way he dominated that in a league that is not short on really good hurdlers and really good sprinters as well. I just want to also mention somebody, like, this is probably the lowest placed person I mentioned here, but I think is worth mentioning. In that same event with Wilson, the 110 hurdles, freshman Jarius Burton was a couple hundredths off the 8th place time. These things could take time. Wilson has been a standout athlete for a bit now, but he wasn't immediately at the start of his career. So maybe file the name Jarius Burton in the back of your head as a future high-level Cougar hurdler kind of in the immediate aftermath of what's been an incredible college career from Wilson. I thought it was really cool, the 4x1, not just winning, obviously, but setting a Clyde Hart Stadium record with their time, which I think was pretty awesome. And I want to point out also, and I think I point this out, but to also say that this guy redeemed himself a bit later when we talk about prelims, but maybe an uncharacteristic performance for Christian Sampe by his standards, getting 6th place in the pole vault, but I think a story with a nice kind of ending, as he's in the last week or so done quite well to redeem himself. I think a better performance, not just in the place, but in how close you were to the teams in front of you. Like, I thought the Cougars did perfectly respectably at Big 12 indoors, but they were, I think, double digits behind the next place team. And U of H was maybe one Christian Sampe performance away from pushing for a top 3 spot, which I think is pretty cool and pretty impressive. I was going to mention first-year Coug Isaac Henchola, excuse me, in his first outdoor championship with the Cougars, earned 4th place in the men's javelin throw. I think that's all between the two of us, Dustin, the big outdoor performances that I want to talk about on the men's side, at least.
Yeah, and the only thing I want to add, did you guys see the picture of Mosquaniani getting his medal like on the stand? And that
I know exactly what you're talking about.
That Texas Austin guy just giving him the death stare. Oh, it's so good. It's such a beautiful, beautiful picture. If you haven't seen it, guys, it's on Twitter. You can find it on there. It's just a fantastic image. If you do nothing else about track, go check that out.
Most memeable Cougar picture of the year, I would say.
It's really, up there.
Big contender.
Yeah, absolutely. Just so funny.
Yeah, and then on the women's side, some strong performances as well. We knew that 4x4 team, both in the relay itself and those athletes as individual athletes, were going to perform really well for Houston. They did exactly that. The 4x4 relay team did, in fact, win the event with a time of 3 minutes, 29.18 seconds. And then some of the members of that team had some really strong individual performances as well. Freshman Michaela Mouton, as a freshman, set the school record in the 400-meter individual event, 51.32 seconds. So that was got her, I believe, a second place finish. Sydney Townsend, another member of that 4x4 relay, running the 400-meter hurdles, beat her own school record with 55 seconds flat in that event, also finished second place. And then Kellyanne Beckford, another member of the relay, another second place finish individually, as she finished second place in the 800 meters as well. So kind of like what we knew was going to be the case on that women's side. Your primary point getters were going to be the 4x4 relay, which we knew was the big favorite and did in fact win. And then also, those athletes as individuals. And so seeing all of them, the trio that we kind of expected to do well, to see all three of them get second place finishes in Big 12, including a freshman in Michaela Mouton, I thought was really exciting.
I think after this weekend, you're going to have a hard time finding across all U of H sports a better first-year female athlete performance, really first-year female athlete season, than what Michaela Mouton did for the Cougars this past weekend in Waco, going back to the indoor season as well, where she was a standout. I wanted to also mention, not her best performance today by any means, but was the only freshman point scorer in the women's 200 finals as well. So she doesn't just have the potential to be, she's already a transcendent athlete in the 400, already part of a conference title winning. They were on the podium in national indoors, right? In the 4x4, the women's side, Dustin? Third, right?
Third, I believe. Yeah.
It was already a part of two extremely good 4x4 relays, but might even have the potential to, by the end of her career, be a national level athlete in the 200 as well. Like I think just incredible versatility from the freshman. Incredibly unlucky Sydney Townsend runs a personal best time, a time that also broke the 19-year-old record for Big 12 record, for fastest in the event, and just had the slight misfortune of being behind Texas freshman Akayla Garrett, who ran an Olympic qualifier level time to win the event ultimately. But I think still an incredible and noteworthy performance by Townsend there. I wanted to also shout out first-year Cougar Miracle Thompson, who got the team 5 points in the 100 hurdles, and also veteran distance standout Claire Meyer, who added 5 points of her own with her fourth place finish in the 10K.
Yeah, you guys have touched on all of it. It's a really great performance by them in Big 12s, and it's good to see, H-Town Speed City just kind of be back up there. And obviously we can talk more about that with some NCAA prelims.
I was just going to say also, the Cougar women were 9th, but I feel like some important context there is that you were only 6 points behind Baylor in 6th place. So this group wasn't that far off from a very similar finish as the men's. And I think that's a major credit to the ladies and how much that side of Cougar track and field has progressed, Dustin, in the last several years. Kind of a almost annual topic. It's like, okay, there's like a standout athlete here or there, but will the women ever have like a real breadth of different like high-level contributors? And I think you certainly saw that at Big 12 Outdoors.
Yep.
Yep.
And then, so getting into NCAA prelims. So for advancing to nationals, unlike indoors where it's just kind of the top 16 go, you have this whole East and West prelims concept. And so we are currently, it's Thursday evening, so we are midway or finishing up on day 2 out of 4 days of competition to determine who is all going to advance to NCAA outdoor championships. And some strong performances by the Cougars so far. The way it goes is Wednesday and Friday were and will be men's competition, and then today and Saturday for the women's, and with some of the field events basically finishing up the first day of competition, other events kind of having your opening round and then your what are called quarterfinals before you get to the semis and then the finals at actual NCAA outdoors. So I think day 1 on the men was I think it went about as well as we could have expected in terms of having the athletes that you wanted to see do well and that you expect to be kind of your potential point scorers at nationals, doing well. The one event that finished up right away was pole vault, and Christian Stampy, kind of like Sam alluded to, making up for not his best performance at Big 12 Outdoors by clearing 17 feet 9 1/4 inches. Actually was in a 9-way tie for the best clearance by anybody at East Prelims. So I think tells you how competitive that event is, how competitive Christian Stampy is in that event, and I think tells you that there's going to be a really insanely razor thin margin at nationals between a podium finish or finishing out of the points. So glad to see him doing well here at prelims. Not the only one who did well, though. We talked about Louis Hinchcliffe and Sean Maswangani in the sprinting events. They finished 1-2, and this is only the first round, so they got to go back again tomorrow and to actually qualify for nationals, but certainly did qualify for quarterfinals on Friday. But yeah, they finished with the 2 best times of anybody in East prelims. Louis Hinchcliffe in the 100 meters ran 10 seconds flat. Sean right behind him at 10:03. And then in the 200 as well, Sean with the third best time in the first round there, 20.43 seconds to advance to the next round of that. And then Devion Wilson, another guy that we expected to do really, really well. All he did in the opening round of the 110 hurdles was finish first, the best qualifying time, 13.24 600ths of a second better than anybody else. So excited to see, and I kind of had forgotten. I'm pulling up the live results because the women's results are still happening. It does
might be doing that on my phone right now.
Yeah, and on the 400 meters, looks like Michaela Mouton finished actually has the 4th best time of anybody. So she
got the big Q.
Got the big Q to advance to tomorrow. Unfortunately, it does not look like any other individual athletes on for U of H on the 400 side were able to advance to the next round there. But then let's see, the 400 hurdles with Sydney Townsend just finished. She finished, had the 3rd best time. So again, advancing to Saturday and then trying to advance from there to nationals proper. And then in the 800 with Kellyanne Beckford, she 12th place after day 1. So advanced to the next round, and hopefully, so there's kind of the athletes, like I said, that we kind of knew were going to do well, and all 3 of them, I think, putting themselves in position to potentially qualify for nationals. So keeping our fingers crossed that everyone finishes out strong for the Cougars here. All right. Any other track and field thoughts, guys? Are we ready to talk about a big addition for Cougar football?
I think I'm down to talk a little off-season football.
Yep. It's never the off season when you have a podcast about football.
We're talking about Texas's favorite sport. First being football, and the second being spring football. You haven't heard that? I was gonna say you're from Texas. I can't believe you haven't heard that old
That's a good one.
nugget before.
That's a good one.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the big addition for the Cougar football since our last episode was, I think it's JD Rhym. I'm thinking.
I think it's Rhym. There's no pronunciation guide from Auburn. Like they have like selected players that they did it for, and I was like, I feel like that one warranted a spot in the pronunciation guide, but I guess not.
No, it's one letter off of the word rhyme. You're fine. You'll make it.
Just go with. I'm assuming it's. We'll eventually.
We'll do it, and when we find out it's wrong, we'll
apologize for it later, the same way we did when we messed up De'Aaron King's name on the show where we talked about his commitment.
Yeah, we'll find out.
Season 1 gem right there.
Find out it was Rhym or something like that going forward, and like, dang it, but no, it was a big recruit for Auburn. Didn't play much or did not play at all. I'm not sure. I think maybe
he played 3 games last year.
He played a bunch as a true freshman. He played in all 12 of their games, and then didn't play that much last year.
Gotcha. But yeah, I mean, so not a lot of experience yet, but someone who very talented recruit and comes in at a cornerback position where UH doesn't have a ton of depth right now. Doesn't have by my football roster, at least I think their only underclassman cornerback on the roster prior to Rhym's commitment was Jamal Shaw. So definitely want some youth at that position. I think remains to be seen if he's going to challenge I think Chris Davis, Jeremiah Wilson, Jalen Emery, Latrell McCutcheon, who I think we kind of would be my guess that the kind of 4 guys who are going to make up the 2 deep at that position, all your 4 upperclassmen there who have a little more college experience than Rhym does. But someone with that recruiting pedigree at a position where, like you said, you just don't have a lot of guys that could maybe start a year or 2 from now. I think it's an exciting add, and if nothing else, add some depth at a position where you don't have a lot of it heading into the next season.
I think notable anytime a guy, and I will say, that year's Auburn team was not the best. Brian Harsin got fired pretty early in the season there. I think they finished 5-7 ultimately, but anytime a guy can get on the field and play a decent amount every game for an SEC program, I think that's notable. Even though he didn't play much last year, actually spent some time away from the team. But I feel like if you have any lingering concerns about that, I feel like the fact that his position coach and primary recruiter at Auburn, looked at him, and having known him pretty intimately, I'd imagine the last 2 seasons, said this guy would be a good fit here. This guy would be somebody who could contribute for the Cougs, which I think that's a pretty good endorsement for me right there. Coming in, like you kind of talked about, Dustin, with 3 seasons of eligibility, a position group with the departure of Isaiah Hamilton that needs the help. You're not sure necessarily he's going to push all the guys that you mentioned who have had a little bit more time in the program, who maybe know new defensive coordinator Shao Wood's system a little bit better, but again, helps that he's played with and knows very well the current quarterback's coach, and will never turn down a top 150, consensus 4-star guy who's able to get on the field pretty early for an SEC program kind of talent, even if he's not an entirely proven guy at the college level yet.
Yeah, I think for me, the big concern is something you mentioned, that he was suspended by the staff at Auburn last year. But it was a staff that didn't recruit him. It was a staff that didn't really know him. And so, sometimes that happens, right? A new coach comes in, and then the guys who one coach wanted, the other guy didn't. But to your point, Sam, he was a top 150 recruit, played a lot for an SEC team. Again, to your point, I'm basically your parrot here, Sam. That team wasn't great, but anybody who can play football in the SEC as a true freshman is a good football player. And if the staff did the research on the suspension and kind of got the story about that, and they have no concerns, why do I have a concern?
Exactly.
All right. You guys want to keep it moving with Cougar women's basketball, also making some off-season additions. Since our last episode, they've signed 2 players, starting with Ilea Love, transfer from Louisville, will be on her 3rd school of her college career after starting her career at Georgia Tech. And she's someone that in the group chat, I think we've been kind of trying to figure out exactly what to make of adding her to as a transfer, because if you look at her first 2 years in college, she'll be a 5th-year player this year. You look at her first 2 years and didn't look at years 3 and 4. You go, oh man, she is on pace to just have a fantastic college career. Started at Georgia Tech, played 19 minutes a game, 4.5 points a game as a freshman. Sophomore, becomes a regular starter, 30 minutes a game, 10.5 points a game. And then all of a sudden, the last 2 years, not so much. Her junior year at Georgia Tech, played under 19 minutes a game, only 3 points a game. I'm not sure what happened. It looks like I think
left mid-semester.
Okay, there you go. Left mid-semester, transfers to Louisville, and then doesn't see and again, it's a good team. They played her 16 minutes a game, 31 games. So that's not nothing that you did see the court after about a quarter and a half per game for a pretty good team, but the production really just not close to what it was her freshman season. So I imagine Houston will be asking her to play a bigger role than Louisville was last year. So you hope that sees the production kind of tick up back towards those sophomore year numbers, 10.5 points, 4.8 rebounds per game in the ACC as a sophomore looks real tantalizing. But I think it is a big question. Do we see the version of her that we saw kind of as a sophomore, or is the trajectory going to kind of continue pointing in a negative direction?
Yeah, I think for me, the concern is just like you said, first 2 years, great. But even that jump between freshman and sophomore year, right? She pretty much doubled her minutes and increased her point production by 1. And that's a little, because if she went from 9 to 10, right? Am I doing the math right?
No, I mean, yeah.
It just, when you double your minutes, I'm not expecting you to double your point output. It just feels like more than one point per game should be a little bit more of an expectation. Am I doing my math all wrong?
I am showing her scoring 4.5 points as a freshman.
Yeah, and then 10.5.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking, because I thought you said 9, and I had it written down as 4.5, but I was like, did I not do it right? So I thought I heard you say 9. So that's
you're doing a deep dishonor to all the various late aughts tutors at Garrison Gym.
We're doing
whatever math you had to take.
Well, I didn't do the math myself, and
that's why I mean you're doing great dishonor.
I took the stat and I had it written down, but I could have swore I heard Dustin say 9, and I was like, I trust him more than I trust myself. So
don't trust me. That's
that's on me, guys. That's on me for what a fool I am. No, but anyways, 10 to your point, Dustin, 10.5 a game. Is something that you get excited about, but at the same time, what happened to make her leave midway through a semester, midway through the season? What happened there? And then we'll talk more about this when we get to our next recruit, but we're bringing in a lot of people, and it definitely seems like Huey is going very heavy on transfers that don't have a lot of eligibility, that he's trying to save his job, but we haven't shown that we're willing to do anything about that.
Yeah, I was gonna say my point I'd add here, if we had a staff that had maybe a bit better track record, a bit more credibility in terms of development, I think I would be fully I would fully be like, you know what? There was a season of her being a genuinely pretty good ACC starter. She was an efficient scorer too. She wasn't a volume 3-point shooter. Was a very good one when she did. Is a bigger guard too, so maybe a matchup problem there. Kind of the equivalent to a nice shooting 6'6", 6'7", big guard, small forward on the men's game side. If you need a men's basketball comp, if you're maybe not as familiar with the women's game, but don't have that much faith in this staff developing talent just based on recent results. And I have the same questions you guys do about. Yeah, I mean, like Dustin said, it's numbers at Louisville were respectable. She played she was a good contributing bench role player for a Louisville team that's been pretty consistently excellent. They were a 6th seed in the most recent NCAA tournament, but again, I gotta have more faith and would like to have had a more recent season of her performing at a high level collegiately.
Yeah, and then the other addition that we've seen for Cougar women's basketball is Wagner forward Kiara Edmonds, who was just, I believe, announced earlier today. She is a 6'2" forward, just spent 1 year with the Seahawks of Wagner, averaged 8.4 points, 7.2 rebounds per game for the Cougars. So, it's another transfer you go, okay, you can kind of see it. And again, I think it kind of is the same point. If we had a coaching staff that had really had a good track record of getting the best out of transfers and making them look like they were, continuing to develop into even better players once they got to U of H, I'd go, okay, yeah. Hey, 8.4 points, 7.2 rebounds as a freshman. That's not bad. You could see her, handling maybe the transition up to a much larger conference. You go, man, that's also that's putting up points on a team that went 4-12 in one of the worst conferences in college basketball. So it's kind of your traditional good player on a bad team there. Maybe that says more about the team. Maybe that says that even those numbers are getting put up because someone has to score some points. Someone has to grab some rebounds,
right?
Even on the bad teams, did seem like she got even better in conference play. Her points and her rebounds both went up in conference play. Led the team actually in scoring in conference play with a hair under 10 points per game. So when you see someone kind of getting close to double doubles on average as a freshman, some part of you was like, okay, that's exciting, but big asterisk for level of competition certainly. And I think kind of like we're talking about, not to be negative every time we talk about women's basketball, but you got to kind of be realistic about asterisk for this staff's ability to develop talent and for scoring even that many points a game. 46% from the field from a forward is not really the kind of efficiency you want to see at that position either. So yeah, a lot of questions about women's basketball and the zero freshmen high school freshmen signed for next year and the kind of not bringing in transfers that you can kind of get okay, sure, but not really ones that excite you too much, I don't think.
Yeah, when you're a Big 12 program, I understand bringing in transfers from lower conferences that played well in a lower conference, but I need maybe a higher end conference, like averaging 9.9 and getting close to a double-double in the Northeast Conference is wildly different than getting 8 in a higher mid-major conference, right? It's, to your point, she was the best player on a really bad team, and while that's great, somebody does have to put the ball in the bucket. It's her or nobody else. So what do you do there, right? It's kind of like, yeah, the numbers look good, but how are they going to look in the Big 12? Like, there's a difference between somebody going from, to the point our last transfer, right, coming over from the ACC and figuring out from there. And putting up 7 in the ACC is much different than putting up 9.9 in the NEC, than the Northeast Conference. So for me, sure, she's a sophomore, so she's going to have 3 years of eligibility remaining, which is nice. But at the same time, I wouldn't mind seeing some freshmen come in and somebody who you want to put up 14 against the Northeast Conference. Okay, I'm listening. If you're going to be a good player on a bad team, I'd like to see more than 9.9, close to 10 a game. In a conference like that.
I think the only thing I would add, the visual viewers might have noticed my recording dying and jumping on us. So I hope I haven't overlapped with too much of what you all said here. So I'll give you a brief, but I'm not gonna kill her college resume at this point. Like, I know the NEC is one of the worst conferences there, but I still think almost 10 points a game in conference play as a freshman with some good rebounding numbers while starting a majority of your team's games. I think that's pretty solid, but it all goes back to the last thing that I definitively heard Dustin say before my recording died. Like, if you have more faith in this staff actually being able to develop these players, especially post players, I feel like you've seen some really positive stuff from guards maybe in the last 7 or 8 seasons, but it's just been a real struggle, even with some multi-year starters, to see the Cougars really get anything consistently out of the post players. And does that change here? That's my question. I'm not sure I feel really strongly that it does.
Well, this offensive system isn't really designed for post players to really go through and you don't run it through your post players. You're running up and down the court. You're gonna miss a lot of matchups. You're gonna have to be undersized because you got to get somebody who's gonna run up and down the court. It's not a back to the basket kind of offense that we run. So you got to get somebody who can run the court. If they cause a turnover, you expect your post to get up and down the floor to lead some fast breaks. So it's a little bit system problem here, but at the same time, you still want to make sure that they can still, kind of ball out there.
All right, keeping it moving right along. We had Cougar baseball end its season since our last episode. Start with something nice. They beat Sam Houston in Sugarland 4-3 to clinch the Don Sanders Cup for it was a third consecutive time that it's been played in its entirety. And we saw some kind of usual suspects helping out Houston. Kerry Arboleda, who's has to be said, had a really fantastic season. Had a 2-run homer early on in this one. Justin Murray, really fantastic last 2 years for Houston. Homered as well. Houston got out to a 4-0 lead in the middle of the 8th, and then things got real scary. Sam Houston strung a bunch of hits together, scored 3 runs to pull within 4-3 in the bottom of the 8th, had the tying run on third base. Justin Murray was able to get the final out there, actually, in a 4-3 game in the 9th, gave up a fly out to the warning track that looked like maybe it was going to tie up the game before it stayed in play for the second out, and then ended up being a 1-2-3 inning for Justin Murray in the 9th to finish off a 4-3 win. So as much as we're going to probably say some negative things about Cougar baseball, they are, I will give them that they are clearing the low bar of winning their rivalries against Rice and Sam Houston, both programs which are not the kind of mid-major powers that they used to be, but, credit where it's due. Houston won 5 out of those 6 games. They swept Rice, won 2 out of 3.
This team won 2 trophies.
They won 2.
A multiple championship season. I don't know why you guys are so upset about how the season went. This team won multiple trophies. Actually, 2 trophies.
Won 2 titles, baby. The Silver Glove title, and we're just calling titles. It sounds better. The Silver Glove title and the Don Sanders Cup title. Unfortunately, after that game, Houston had to go back to playing Big 12 teams, which have been showing here that they are better than Houston, and that's what we saw as well with the series being in Houston. With all the weather going on, kind of amazing. We even got 2 games in that series, but we did, unfortunately, as those 2 final scores were, respectively, 20 to 3
I know it's
and 9-2. So, yeah, man, it's like the one thing that you've been able to kind of say for U of H baseball in Big 12 play this year is that they've lost a lot of games, but they haven't gotten blown out that often. I've kind of tried to give some like a little bit of credit and say, hey, they've had 3 different series where they had as many or more runs scored than their opponents, and just maybe a little bit unlucky to lose 2 out of 3. But officially going from beating Baylor to win that series, the incredible run that Houston is on, won every single conference series last year, wins their first conference series this year to keep that streak going, and then lost every remaining series the rest of the way to finish 7-21, losing fully 3/4 of their Big 12 games.
You had 2 ones where weather affected it, so you could have potentially split those series, and you didn't in either case, emphatically.
So not great. 20-3, 9-2. Not
you combine our 2 scores, we still lose the Sunday game where we gave up 9.
Yeah. If we pushed all of our chips into one game to try to make it close,
they would have almost doubled us up.
We would have lost 9-5, and we would have lost the other game 20-0. So I don't think that's even better. I think that's it's a little bit, if anything, less embarrassing to lose 20-3 and 9-2 than 20-0 and 9-5. I don't know.
It's kind of like scoring a 3 on a test versus scoring a 0 on a test. Like, you did the 0, you could say, I missed the test when you were in college. I didn't go. If you get a 3, you showed up and you put in effort, okay? You showed up and you tried and failed miserably.
I like the idea that if it had been 20-0, that Cougar baseball fans,
we'd just be like, that didn't happen. We weren't there.
Do you have any proof that the team was there?
No-show to that one. I think our team slept through that game, actually. I'm still not convinced it didn't. I mean, but it is what it is. As into the season, had Houston been able to split those 2 games with Oklahoma State, could have at least finished the season 500 overall as they came in 26-26. But no such luck. 26-28, and just It's the kind of season that it ends and we're all sitting around laughing about it, because what else do you say about a season where you debuted, going 7-21 in Big 12 play, and insult to injury had to watch the two other teams joining from the American, who both finished comfortably behind you in the American last year, leapfrog you and have pretty respectable first-year campaigns in the Big 12. So
they're having fun, just up 45 right now at the Big 12 championship. Like, since he just beat UT last night.
I live 10 minutes from the ballpark. I sent you guys the screenshot of the email that I got from the Rangers, and it was like, come watch your favorite Big 12 team in the Big 12 championship at Globe Life Park. And I was like, no.
Not my favorite Big 12 team.
Delete.
What a bad way to end the college career of someone like Justin Murray, who is a great, with a capital G, two-way player for the Cougars. A guy who I would imagine, and I'm not saying this based on any specific knowledge, I'm just saying I would imagine could have gone to another program after the awesome 2023 season he had, but he elected to stay. He elected to try to get this team into a winner. And by no fault of Justin Murray, are we sitting here talking about a team that was 7-21 Big 12 play. Got to mention also Kerry Arboleda, Harold Call, Cade Satelli, all guys who had varying degrees of, I would say, good to extremely good 2024 seasons. Yet we're talking about a team that had a losing overall record and only avoided finishing mathematically dead last in the Big 12 standings by virtue of having two more games canceled than BYU. And
no DFL, though, boys. No DFL.
Good measure, had a series loss to that BYU team that, yes, technically was mathematically DFL instead of the Cougars. The team won 4 Big 12 games in its final 9 series. That's crazy. What are you going to say, Dustin?
I was going to say, talk about Justin Murray was Justin Murray. Continued to have amazing. Arboleda set the freaking program record for slugging percentage.
Yep.
And we went and Justin
this is an offensive friendly season, but still, still a good season.
Yeah, we went freaking 4-21 after the Baylor series. Just boggles the mind.
Yep.
And you could say up until this past weekend, the margins of defeat weren't lopsided. And if you look at some top line numbers like team ERA, like team batting average, those would tell you that U of H wouldn't have been a very good Big 12 team, but maybe one that should have been closer to the low end of that cut line of 10 teams that still qualify for the Big 12 tournament versus where we actually are, which is being tied for fewest wins in the conference. I don't think any of us expected the 2024 version of this team to contend for a Big 12 title or anything like that, or really be a lot better than 7th and 9th in the conference. But guys, the gulf between U of H being a lower mid-standings Big 12 team that still qualified for the conference postseason and where U of H actually ended up is pretty sizable. And there's just no excuse for a team in Texas to be this bad at baseball. I know simply being located in Texas doesn't mean you have a birthright to have excellent college baseball, but can we just have like top 75 RPI quality college baseball? Because that's not even fucking close to what this team was this year. And it's a shame because there are so many good individual seasons that just did not add up to anything better than losing overall record, and yet another season of being just well on the outside of the sports postseason. A postseason that we used to just almost, wouldn't say take it for granted, but for several years there, I was like, yeah, U of H is going to be in or around. I looked forward to it, guys, Memorial Day, like watching the baseball selection show and seeing if we were going to host and be like, oh, does U of H have the RPI to host? Like, I see people like yelling at Kendall Rogers about like, are we going to host? Like, what's our RPI? And it's just like, God, what I would fucking give to be like annoyed at Kendall Rogers because he has us as a 2 seed in Starkville instead of hosting or something right now, instead of just being like the team won 4 Big 12 games after the first weekend of March.
Yeah.
Sorry, as I say, like it's not gonna.
Yeah,
we're gonna end this episode on any happier note after this, but just like I wish I had some way to kind of take us out of the dive here and be like, but I feel really good about this. Like, no, Justin Murray's college career is done. Kerry Arbolida's college career is done. I'm sure Cade Satelli, who already had pretty good draftable stuff, if he's not in any kind of health problem, I bet he's a high enough draft pick that he goes. And
yeah,
we knew there wasn't going to be a change in leadership. Like we basically like it or lump it. We knew that, but man, it's just hard to just be like, to think about another season or two of college baseball, sport that we all love and are all very much in the tank for. This program just isn't anywhere near relevant in any meaningful sense.
Yep.
All right. Unfortunately, it doesn't get a lot more fun because our last topic to talk about tonight is Cougar softball, which is, if anything, looking even worse and more dysfunctional than Cougar baseball. The Cougar softball team had its season end already, but what we have gotten in the last couple of weeks is transfers out, and what we have not gotten is any indication of what the staff intends to do with the head coach position at Cougar softball going forward. As our best understanding via Google that Kristen Vesely's contract expires this year. So if that's true, theoretically, Houston could make a move without having to pay the buyout. Whoever is the head coach next year, it looks like they're going to be pretty significantly resetting the roster, as I believe the only kind of successful players or top players for Houston who had eligibility left, in the lineup, it's, Lyra Bate, Taria Coleman, both have entered the transfer portal. I think maybe Michaela Nita, maybe was the freshman, I think you could say, had a kind of good year, who I believe is still coming back, but looking like pretty slim pickings. And, we've seen Vesely and staff, they've done a good job of bringing in hitters who, via the transfer portal, who were able to come in and contribute. But not really doing it consistently with bringing in freshmen. And as we've talked about at length, have not been able to bring in a pitcher, to put together any kind of a successful pitching staff. So looks like whoever is coach next year is going to be very much kind of starting from scratch. And by now we should have been able to say conclusively that is not Kristen Vesely, because the last number of years have been wholly unacceptable from the Cougar softball team, both in terms of on the field results and off field, cohesion and things like that. But we've got no indication. So, are there teams whose seasons are over? I've been kind of, frank that my dream hire is James Landrino from McNeese, who's had that program doing really, really well on a shoestring budget. Their season's over. No reason we couldn't be talking to him if we had a job opening. We are now, I believe, into the tournament, the softball
super regionals are next weekend or this coming weekend.
Yeah, the softball transfer portal. We've got players going in. This is when there should be a new coach getting this team ready for next year. But instead, we've got an administration that has not announced a change, has also not even
announced that she's coming back.
Coming back, yeah. No one even
no
knows.
Extension, no anything. We don't know.
So just a baffling position that Houston finds itself in, and really, I think all three of us are struggling to come to grips with why is the softball program such a mess right now, and why it's the easiest thing in the world to say we're not bringing a coach back on when their contract expires, and you just absolutely got the shit beat out of you in conference play, and you haven't been good for 4 or 5 years. That's exactly where Houston's at. Inexplicable that we have not seen a change in leadership announcement for this program, and that we aren't presumably out there interviewing coaches.
For me, it's the unknown, right? Like, obviously, we've made it clear on this podcast, what we believe should happen, right? We've made it pretty obvious how the three of us feel about that. If you don't understand how we feel, please go check out SH Podcast on Twitter.
Dustin basically said it.
I think right. We believe that there should be new leadership, but even if there's not, even if you aren't bringing in new leadership, we need to know that she's been extended. Because even if she is coaching on her last year, something like that, right? She had been coaching. Or I think I raised this point in the group chat, right? Like, maybe you can't actually fire her or anything like that. Maybe her contract doesn't expire until the end of the Women's College World Series. But then Dustin came back and said, well, you can at least announce that you're not going to extend it. And it's like, yeah, that you're not going to bring her back. Like, we have nothing. We don't know. So how is she supposed to recruit with no contract? Even if you're keeping her, she needs a contract to be able to go recruit. She needs to know what she... We have no idea. Nothing. Maybe she knows and we don't, which is fine, right? Like, that happens, but it would be nice to get something from the administration on this, whether she's staying or going. Whether we're keeping her or she isn't getting a new contract. Either way, I think it's only fair for us to know.
Yeah, I mean, it bears repeating. Right now, UH's top 5 performing lineup regulars have graduated or are currently in the portal. The top pitcher for both ERA and innings pitched by a wide margin, Shelly Smith, is out of eligibility. Pretty clear. Whoever is going to actually be the head coach of this team next year, whether it's Kristen Vesely or insert name of new head coach here, is going to have some serious roster building to do. And it's pretty unacceptable. We have no idea what U of H is going to do here. All publicly available information, like Dustin says, that the current head coach has a contract that'll expire over the summer after a 2021 extension. So if that's the case, the situation seems like a pretty open and shut, let the contract expire and indicate publicly that the program will be going in a different direction, a la what U of H did with the tennis program shortly after that team's season ended. Yet here we are a couple weeks after this team's season ended with no indication either way what U of H is going to do. The postseason's already well underway. A number of teams have announced their opening. So certainly U of H is not, even as a Big 12 program, not by any stretch the biggest conference opening, but just by dint of being a Big 12 program is still an attractive job. It's still one that will get people with a good resume to this point to look at it. And people more in the know than us with regard to softball don't seem to have any better idea than we do. We haven't heard that, U of H plans on moving on, but they're making it public. We haven't heard that, U of H is planning on announcing extension, just silence. And if the intention is to keep Coach Vesely, which I think would be a terrible idea, but let's just say that's the plan. Like you said, Bobby, you should announce that ASAP. You should have announced that within a week of the season's end, to be more exact. If that, and that's the wrong way to go, in my opinion, but if that is the way that U of H is like, well, we need to go this way, for whatever stupid fucking reason Chris Pesman's going to post facto invent on this extension, you should have done that already. And if the intention is to let the contract expire and eventually hire a new coach, you should have announced that within a week of the season's end as well. There's just no good reason to be talking here on May 23rd to have this be such a complete open question. We should know at least one way or the other. Not saying U of H should have already made a hire by now. I mean, there's a decent chance you're at least going to consider maybe an assistant from one of the better still in the postseason kinds of programs. But if this program is going to have a new head coach, the time is past due for the school to signal to the coaching market that this will be an open job. I mean, I don't know. Is there a U of H saves a certain amount of money if they make a change after a certain date angle here? I don't see how, for the reasons you said, Bobby. And you could just put out a statement with a boilerplate thank you to the last head coach and just say you're going in a different direction. It's not a firing. It's a non-renewal unless U of H at some point secretly agreed to an extension, which brings me back to my original point that if you are going to make a change and you do have this coach under contract, why aren't you indicating that publicly? Like, whether through press release or I think whether through, I'm not calling Duarte a PR guy, but kind of using a Duarte story as kind of your kind of de facto press release there. I mean, maybe in the next few days or weeks, this gets some kind of logical conclusion and all of our ranting and raving is pointless. Would love that. But I think my bigger picture concerns here, guys, is that it doesn't feel like non-football or men's basketball sports exist for U of H's athletic leadership, except when those programs do something well. And then Chris Pesman's quick to run out there and, oh yeah, check out our volleyball program. It's like, brother, you are fucking lucky that David Rare wanted to be in Houston bad because of his wife. Like David Rare saved you making a dud hire like we've made in a number of sports, in the last 10 years. And, they don't exist except when those programs do well or, the one or two times a year Chris Pesman feels the need to try out the excuse of, some variation of, football support or Dana's buyouts really keep me from holding any non-revenue sports to any kind of account because we just don't have the money for it. And U of H hasn't always had perfect leadership, and you could say what you want about Mac Rhodes and Hunter Yurachek and their kind of combined era of leadership. Coaches were actually sometimes held accountable for sagging results during that period of Cougar athletics. During a period of Cougar athletics when we were a Conference USA and American school, I would guess even with our non-full Big 12 revenue share, getting a lot less from that side than we were before. And yet here we are several seasons into a postseason drought in a program that's never had a postseason drought this long. And we have no idea what's going on and no faith that anything will be different. Like, I'm somebody who wants to come on here and preach the gospel of being an all sports U of H fan. And there are a lot of non-football men's basketball programs to be excited about that we talk about. I don't want to make it seem like everything is doom and gloom and everything in this athletic program that's not football or men's basketball is bad. Far from it. But how am I supposed to tell people, hey, you should be excited about like bat and ball sports season? I love college baseball. I've had so many great memories following Cougar softball. Like, I still remember the 2010, 2011 Cougar women's basketball team that just fucking dominated Conference USA and went to the postseason and represented the school so well. How can I tell people to do that when the teams mostly haven't been that competitive and there's no sign that anyone at the top notices or even cares? That's the case. So I'll step off my soapbox, guys, but that's my big frustration right now, that it's not just softball specific. I think it's what softball this is symptomatic of.
Yeah, I think the thing that kills me is, we can talk about, and again, not a coincidence that all of a sudden there's this, article that comes out about, the Holgerson buyout and the pending lawsuit is really, really striving us for cash. That's not an excuse if your coach is out of contract. It just isn't. You got to pay someone to be the coach next year, whether that's Chris Invest. It doesn't cost you any more to go hire somebody else than it does to give Chris Invest a new contract. There's not a buyout. You just the cost is the cost of having a softball coach. The only question is, what softball coach do you want to have? You probably don't want to have the one that we talked about. We're clowning on the baseball team for going 7-21. The softball team wishes they went 7-21, 4-23. 4-23, and they got 5 of their 9 conference series at home. They got a schedule that benefited them, if anything, and they lost 13 of their last 14 conference home games.
God.
And we talked about baseball. You were this bad, and you had good players. Taria Coleman, great player. Kennedy Thomas, great player. Jasmine Rollin hit the crap out of the ball this year. Lair Bate hit the crap out of the ball. Had a great year. Bree Cantu has been great for the entire time we've had her. Like, how do you have 5 starters that good? And I mean, other than I think we know the answer is that we didn't bother recruiting any pitchers. Why? Like, how? You're this far into the season. You haven't been able to bring a pitcher out of the high school ranks and coach them up. You haven't been able to bring in a transfer. Like, how on earth is Kristen Vesely not officially not the Cougar softball coach? Just absolutely makes no sense whatsoever. And I know you guys are like, well, if you're going to bring her back, no, I don't even want to acknowledge that as a possibility. This is such, and like the Whitting stuff, we can talk about, I don't agree with the decision to give him a new contract last year when he was out of contract, but it kind of, you could kind of justify it. You could kind of say, okay, up to 2018, he had been a far better coach than we deserved. 2019 team, top 40 RPI, should have gone to a regional, kind of got screwed. 2020, you can kind of write it off and go, okay, whatever. We didn't look great, but the season didn't finish. So you just count it as a nothing. Say, okay, a coach who's done really, really fantastic here on the whole, has done great off the field, like we always talk about. The fundraising stuff. Like, they have nice, shiny new facilities because of Todd Whitting. Sorry. 3 bad years in a row. I can understand saying, you know what, 3 bad years in a row is not enough to cancel out everything good he's done. We're going to give him a chance.
Yeah.
It's a little bit embarrassing to give your coach a new contract and then immediately just get spanked in the Big 12 the way we did. But I kind of get how we got here. And the money crunch, I kind of get why. With 2 years off on his contract, we're not going to fire Todd Whitting. That makes sense to me. I don't like it. Ideally, would I like to be able to just kind of snap my fingers and like, oh, we're looking for a new baseball coach? Yeah, if I'm being honest, I think that would be my preference. But I get there's nothing, absolutely nothing, unless Google is lying to me and we gave Kristen Vesely some much longer contract than what Google says is true, in which case, why the flippity frick did we do that? But there's absolutely no justification whatsoever for Kristen Vesely. Her success here was not nearly what Whitting was. The failures the last few years have been even more dramatic. The failures this year were even more dramatic. Just absolutely no explanation whatsoever for why there has not been a Houston is making a change in leadership in the softball program announcement up until this point, other than what we've heard behind the scenes, which is that Kristen Vesely and her partner are really good friends with a bunch of U of H administrators who just want to keep her around because they're friends, which again gets to what Sam said. It's just not giving a shit whether or not your women's teams actually succeed or not.
Yep. I feel like that's a good spot to end it on, with Dustin going on a rant on softball. Certainly. I love it. I love it.
I was gonna say I have done my rant. I certainly can't. I can't top or say more. I think eloquently what Dustin said there.
Yep.
You want to take us home, bud?
All right. On that note, as always, want to encourage you, if you like hearing 3 guys yell about the Cougar softball program on a weekly basis, we'd love for you to go to patreon.com/shpodcast, or we talk about other things too. $5 a month will get you access to our bonus content when we put that out. It'll get you the good karma of supporting the work that we're doing on a weekly basis to bring you the latest and occasionally greatest in Cougar athletics. If you want to support us in non-financial ways, you can do that by telling a friend about the podcast or leaving us a 5-star review in your app of choice. We would love for you to get in contact with us as well. You can email us shpodcast@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at shpodcast. You can go follow our non-active Blue Sky account at podcast.bsky.social. I tried real hard. It's not happening, I don't think, but
probably not.
Make it happen. I don't know. Anyways, that's going to do it for us. If you made it to the end of all this long ranting at the end, you are my hero. And as always,
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Vamos los Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
All right. Go Cougs. Let's go.